This is Smarter Cars, a podcast about autonomous vehicles.
This is the finish line. The Stanford racing team has made its way into the history books.
But the most important thing for me is it actually doesn't matter who comes first. It matters that we as a community achieve it.
Early in a technology, a thousand flowers should bloom.
Welcome to Smarter Cars. This is your host, Michelle Kairouz. Today on the podcast, we talk with Ding Zhao, an assistant research scientist at the University of Michigan. He focuses on automated vehicle safety and testing. Ding, welcome to the show.
Hi, this is Ding Zhao. I'm happy to be here.
Great. You are currently doing some research at the University of Michigan. Can you tell us a little bit about your academic background and the areas of research you've been working on as it relates to autonomous vehicles?
Sure. So I'm an assistant research scientist at University of Michigan. I'm affiliated with mechanical engineering as well as a robotic institute. So my research is about more focused on self-driving, connected vehicle, artificial intelligence, machine learning, this type of technologies.
Great. And one of the areas of your research you've been focused on is safety for autonomous vehicles. And so I'd love to ask you some questions about the issues around how we can determine when autonomous vehicles are safe and some of the standards we should use and how we should think about that. But before we dive into that, perhaps we could just take a minute to talk about the very tragic Uber accident in Arizona that killed a pedestrian. I assume you've seen the video that was released from the car.
Yeah, so it's a very fortunate event. The 49-year-old woman was walking with her bicycle and outside there's a crosswalk on a 4-lane road, I think in Phoenix, so at night, but was hit by the Uber vehicle traveling at about 40 miles per hour. So the police said the car was in an autonomous mode, but with the operator behind the wheel, but operator either the operator or the car stop do anything before the collision happened. So it's a very unfortunate. So the Uber has since halted its self-driving test in Arizona, and obviously the DOT, Department of Transportation in Arizona, was really sad about this event, and they also stopped Uber from testing in the state. So yeah, right now the National Transportation Safety Board is opening an investigation about this fatal accident. So this is actually this is the first fatal accident for self-driving car in the world. So we are all waiting for the NTSB's investigated report. But this we have also saw some videos online. It's about how the accident happens. It's dark. It's at 10 p.m. and the pedestrian has a black coat walking across the street. So yeah, there is a lot of details about this event, but we need to wait for the investigation from NTSB.
Right. What would be helpful for your work and your research in the area of safety for autonomous vehicles? What kinds of information would you like to see from the NTSB investigation that would help in your research?
Yeah, so one strong information is, so we need to manage the risk of testing and deploying autonomous vehicle. So autonomous vehicle has a great potential to prevent crashes and enhance the fuel economy, and it can bring a lot of economical beneficial and save lives. So it have huge potential. However, we are still at the beginning phase of this technology. So how to link the technology to the society is a key. That actually decide how successful the technology will be. So one strong message is there will be a risk for testing and deploying self-driving car, and how to do that. So that's actually is exactly my research, and how to safely evaluate and test the self-driving car, and it can even prove what level it is and how safe it is before we deploy them on the public street.
That's right. Your work is going to be very important going forward. Let's move into some of the discussion around safety. One of the initial questions that we really haven't decided as a society is how safe is safe enough? What is the level of safety that we should want for autonomous vehicles? If you were in charge, what level of safety would you want to see?
Well, so I would say at least it should be safer than a human to prevent crash than to increase to kill more people. So right now at the U.S., we have more than 30,000 people die each year in the traffic accidents. So it's a huge number if you consider how many people these days can be killed in the war. 30,000 people a year is a very large number. So that's why the Department of Transportation, as well as all the automotive company, want to bring this number down, use all these kind of technologies. So autonomous vehicle is one trial. So we were very successful using adaptive cruise control, like AEB, autonomous emergency braking, or even the safety belt in the history to prevent crashes. We were very successful, and now we are kind of saturated using these old technologies. And the new technology is a self-driving car. So I believe people say the self-driving car should be twice safer than human, 3 times safer than human. I think they are all good number. As long as we can have very strong belief that self-driving car can be safer than the human, I think we should consider using it. Another benefit of doing that is because it's a machine, so it's very hard to train to have a better education for the human at this stage for driving, because most of the crashes human in maybe have secondary task, or they just get drunk. It's very hard to educate the people to drive carefully while he decide to have a drink and drive, right? But the car, it can learn from this accidents, from the disengagement. Like for example, last year we have thousands of disengagement report collected from the state of California. So all those events, near miss and the disengagement, can dramatically help and increase the safety of the car. So back to your question, how safety is enough? I would say as long as we have very strong evidence that the car can be safer than the human, I think we should study to consider about this technology. And actually, there are two ways to get there, to get a perfect world, perfect transportation situation. One is incremental, meaning we adaptive cruise control and AEB, and then more driver assistance technologies. So gradually we increase the safety. Another one is what Uber and Google, they are planning, because they think, oh, human is too hard to model and predict and work with. So they keep the human completely out of the loop. So the former solution, I think we can deploy the car quicker and claim the car is already better than the human. So we should use the technology, or the previous is already better than the previous version. The lighter one, that's a fully level 4 autonomous vehicle, I think we should wait a little bit more to have the evidence to really tell it is safe.
Right. So the level, so, I guess one question that comes to mind, especially now, is what level of safety we should need before we test an AV on public roads, even with a human safety driver. You pointed out some of the issues around humans in the loop. Obviously, when you look at the cars that are being tested, they're not perfect AVs. We're still relying on a human safety driver. Should they be measured in some way before they're allowed on the road? And then when they're on the road and we see things happen, should we consider them to be a human driver standard, or should we be measuring them against, what a perfect level 4 AV may do in the future?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's two questions.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the question. I think for the to test the AV, there are a few ways. So obviously you can do simulation, and Google and Waymo, I think all of them, Waymo or Google Waymo or Uber or other cars, automakers, they all use simulation to quickly accumulate a lot of mileages to test the basic high-level algorithm. So that simulations, I think, should be done before we really use a car to tell a car is whether it's too stupid.
To go on public roads, yeah.
Before we go to public road. Mm-hmm. But even between the simulation and the public road testing, I think we should have this closed environment testing. So for example, we have designed the AMP City as the one of the first. That's actually the first the testing track specifically for connected and automated vehicle. Mm-hmm. So by using this kind of environment, we can test and evaluate the vehicle in a relatively safe environment. So the car, for example, you have a self-driving car. The car will first drive to the AMP City, and we have designed a few variety kinds of tests in AMP City to test whether the car can survive from some variety of types of scenarios. And the scenario could be simulated, could be use some real object, for example, another car or balloon car, or even some augmented reality vehicle. So by using all this variety of scenarios, we can quickly have an evaluation of the vehicle and say how safe it is, right? So then after we get this certificate, then we can deploy the car onto the public road. So that will dramatically reduce the risk of the vehicle rather than directly deploy the car onto the public road.
Right. So you're saying between using the computer simulation and doing some testing on closed tracks like at M-City, that combination should give manufacturers enough evidence of the car's safety that they can make a determination that it's okay to test on public roads.
Yeah, that's a very good conclusion. But for the real the real world deployment, also I think we need a very good strategy. For example, probably I won't start from the downtown New York to test the self-driving car. I probably start with some relatively easier scenario, or I probably don't want to deploy the car right in a snowy day at Michigan, where you can now see you can now see lane markers. There is very dark or very rainy. It's rainy and icy night. So that is give a lot of risk for us. I think the car needs to gradually test it and evaluate it from those environment.
So public public roads testing, you're saying once the car is ready to test on public roads with a human safety driver, they should start out in kindergarten and then work their way up to college. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So think about it when you work with your kids, right? So you teach them how to drive. Would you ask them, hey, go to Chicago downtown or New York and deal with all these jaywalkers, those crazy taxi drivers? So do you think that's a best place to teach your kids for driving, right? So that may not be the ideal situation. Yeah, so that's probably you want to say, oh, drive on in your backyard or even some road just in front of your house, and then you get you gain more and more confidence about your child, and then you can drive together with your child to some downtown area, small town, then to on the highway. So that's we have. There's always there's always a trade-off between how much you can encounter on the road, or how quickly you can encounter safety critical on the road, and also what's the risk for you to do that. So I think we need a very smart deployment strategy to balance how quickly we evaluate the car and how high is the risk.
Great. Let's talk about some of the ways then moving into testing AVs as they get more experience and perhaps getting to a point where we can measure or demonstrate safety even to take the driver out of the car and for final deployment. Let's talk about some of the ways we could demonstrate that autonomous vehicles have reached sort of that level of safety. I think you have said in your work that test methods for traditional cars are something like having a doctor take a patient's blood pressure or heart rate, while testing for automated vehicles is more like giving someone an IQ test. I don't know if that's a direct quote, but I seem to recall that. Can you explain your views on that?
Right. Yeah, that's actually the reality of challenge for testing AV nowadays. Traditionally, we have very good SAE, the Association of Automotive Engineering. They have a lot of standards to guarantee and maintain the safety level of automotives. Automotive, we have maybe 40,000 parts in one automotive, and hundreds of chips in the one modern car. So it's already very complicated system. But you see, most of the accidents, like only 5% or 6% of the accidents are due to manufacturer failure, and 96% of them are just human errors. So the automotive industry has done a very good job to guarantee the safety of the car. So what they do, they have the standards and requirement for all the part, all the criteria. So this is like how you can maintain your body, right? So that's when they test a vehicle, they almost test as a limit, either the limit of the maneuver, the controllability, or the limit as your robustness, or the robust of the part, how long it can last. So this all feels like you have maintained a very strong body. But for self-driving car, I think the brain is the quite important thing. So it actually not only you give a command and let this robot to act. Moreover, so it need to make decisions. So a bad decision, no matter how strong you are, if your mind is not clear, you still will walk and knock onto the wall. So right. So when we test this guy, whether he can walk, he can jump, he can swim, we need to test whether this person whether they can think clearly. So that's the situation of self-driving car, and why testing self-driving car is so hard. So that's actually not only the machine itself, but actually it's become how smart is the machine, how reliable is the machine.
It's funny, some people have suggested that we should just be able to administer a driving test like we do for 16-year-olds when they get a driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think about that? You mentioned testing at M City and things like that. Is there any possibility that we could come up with a driving test that would reveal the IQ of the car, as you're saying?
Yeah. So that's I think we must have this regulation for autonomous vehicle, because again, so if you look back to this, the tragedy happened for the Uber car. Uber is, I think we all believe Uber is very good company, has very serious about this self-driving car development. However, if we give this authority to any companies who maybe just launch one day, who make the car in its own garage, and also we let this kind of car onto the public road, so it's very unlikely we can bring down the fatality, but actually the fatality will really goes up. So regulation, I think, is a must. But the question is, there's no doubt about it, I think, for in the field. But how to design a regulation, how to design this certificate system for self-driving car is still under investment. So in my research, I have proposed so-called accelerated evaluation test, meaning we collected the data from the real world, and this data can represent the real world driving situations. And then we use statistical techniques, particularly unsupervised learning, to cluster those data, or those naturalistic recorded scenario into different key scenarios. So for instance, I can say, okay, so there are like 10,000 scenarios that 99.999% you will encounter in your whole life. So this is all the situations you have. And for each scenario, there is some variation. For example, you can follow a car, but the lead car can drive up and brake abruptly. So there is some variation for each variables. And we can have some statistical description of these variables. And by using this whole model, this tool, and also the performance of a particular vehicle, we can adaptively give test to a self-driving car, just like how we test the IQ or how we test the GRE. I remember anything with the computer and the human. So we give the test to the car and look at how it responds. And if it responds well, we give a harder question. And if it responds not that satisfied, then we give a question in the same level. And then eventually the safety metric converge. We'll decide, okay, so this is your safety metric, and we'll say, okay, so how good it is. Is it 2 times above the human, 3 times above the human? If it is, probably give a chance for this vehicle to be on the public road. And I also believe we should also have a requirement for the automotive or self-driving company to report their disengagement, because that also represent the development of the car, because this is a self-driving car. So today it looks like this, but tomorrow, after it tests, maybe like 1 year later, it may be smarter because it can learn from history, from its disengagement. So all this should be taken into consideration. So it's not a simple system. I say, okay, so drive from here to A to B, it's a street road or some curvy road, and do parallel parking. It will be totally different from the human driver test, because the advantages and disadvantages are totally different between a human driver and the self-driving car. Self-driving car will never drink. It will never get fatigue. It will never get fatigue. And it have very good, very fast response rate. That's all better than a human. But human has its own the advantage because human can sense how other drivers will move and make very wise and subtle, sometimes even subtle decision, but that's very critical in the later phase. And so that's the difference between these two. So I think we need to redesign all the tests. So use a current test for self-driving I don't think that will work. But I'll redesign the whole scheme for self-driving car. Another also very important aspect is so for at the beginning of the deployment of self-driving car, the car still need to drive together with other road users. For example, pedestrians, cyclists, and other human drivers. So how the self-driving car, the autonomous vehicle can deal with the mixed traffics is also very critical. It's also very critical test or question.
Right. So when you talk about how kind of a typical driving test for a 16-year-old isn't enough, but you have in your research developed this accelerated evaluation system that would provide, in your view, greater confidence. Can you explain why just doing on-road driving or on-road driving plus computer simulation? I think in your research, in the field, you refer to on-road driving as naturalistic field operation tests. Can you explain why that's not enough or what the inefficiencies are there?
Okay. So yes, why it's not enough? Because you cannot control the environment. So for instance, if you have one disengagement, during one of your trip on public road, it's very unlikely you'll encounter the same thing and at your own wish, right? For example, you have a rainy night and you have a deer just come across in front of your car, and your car become confused. Or I heard another report. I read another report that the kangaroo is confused a lot, confused a lot of these self-driving cars. So all this you cannot control the kangaroo, right? So you can jump here and jump to another spot, and let's test whether the car can stand. So it's really like a nature of the statistics. So if you describe them in mathematical way, so if you only use a naturalistic or public road to test autonomous vehicle, it's more like what we call Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo means you randomly sample things. You just draw lots, and you cannot control what is the outcome of this, what you will encounter in the next stage, right? So it's life is a chocolate. You can never tell.
So how many miles would you have to drive with public road testing then in order to achieve your standard of saying better than human driving?
Oh boy, that's really a huge number. It will blow my mind. The RAND company, the RAND Institute estimated the whether, just to tell whether a car is safer than a human, you need to drive 11 billions of miles.
11 billion miles. Okay.
Yeah, that is equal to use 1,000 drivers to drive 1,000 years in naturalistic condition.
And computer simulation alone doesn't kind of fix that or accelerate that enough. Why is that?
Right. Yeah, computer is very good. It's maybe the greatest invention in our age. However, for a computer, the problem is you don't know whether that is correct or not, right? So still it's like computer game. So you describe a world, and then you play within this world. You can make this world really simple and ideal, but you don't know how close the computer simulation is to the real world. So we need some proof, and also you also don't know. For example, it's very hard to simulate the weather condition plus the road condition plus the response of the human, right? So that's all. We have a lot of uncertainties in the real world, and we need tons of data to understand this behavior, and sometimes it's unpredictable. But computer, you can always run a program, and if the car learn from this program and become deterministic for the car. So I would say computational simulation is a step one. But how close your simulation will match the real world, we need some intermediate approach to link between these two and prove that simulation result is reasonable.
Right. So with your approach with accelerated evaluation, if I understand it correctly, you're basically trying to figure out the most difficult scenarios and then spend more time testing those as a shortcut so that you don't have to drive as many miles to sort of get the equivalent of a lot of real world miles driven. Is that right?
Well, roughly, I would say the word difficult is not that accurate. Okay. Because if you imagine what would be the most difficult scenario for a self-driving car? Maybe a buffalo that run jump in front of you from the bridge.
Yeah.
However, it's not very useful, meaningful to always test this kind of scenario because it happens very rarely in the real world. So what we really care about is something that is challenging for the car, but also likely to happen. So you need to combine these two together to get the scenario we want to test.
And how do you do that? How do you figure out what those scenarios are to test?
Okay, so that's based on the performance of the previous test. For example, I'll give a test to the car and see how this car will respond to this scenario. So if the car can respond very reasonably, we say, okay, so the car is very strong in this aspect, but also at the same time we'll calculate the likelihood or how likely this event will happen in the real world. If it is also very high, we'll mark it. So say, okay, so this is an event that the car may not deal with very well, but also it probably will happen a lot in the real world. And then we sample around this event. We give something similar to the vehicle to confirm our assumption. Until we say, okay, so this event is the car is very vulnerable to this type of event, and how vulnerable it is, we have a measurement, and then we conclude, oh, this is the event the car should pay attention, and if you just use the current design, you will have these difficulties when you encounter this event, this environment.
It's interesting because when, as humans, we sit around trying to think of what is challenging and what's a challenging test or scenario that a car might encounter, it may be that autonomous vehicles find things challenging that humans would not find challenging, and so it's difficult to know. And so how do you address that?
Right. So exactly. So that's sometimes it's straightforward, sometimes it's not. I can design a car that can deal with some very tricky scenario very good, very well. However, it can fail, almost always fail in the normal driving condition, right? It's like nothing around. I can still knock into a tree. It's very easy to design this kind of car. So, but we need to tell whether the car has the problem or not. So that is always you need to think about how the car is designed, and also think about how to evaluate the car so that the flaws of design will not reveal in the real world. What we do is we use this so-called important sampling. That is, we never find any sign that the car may fail, or although it didn't have any collision, the car responds slowly, or the car responds is not very properly. Then we say, okay, so there might be a problem for this kind of scenario. Then we use this so-called importance sampling to sample the situation similar to this situation according to the real world model. Then we can verify whether the car really has a problem or not. So that's a way how we can find out the critical scenario for particular design. So there's a lot of mathematics methodology in this field. Is a very hot field right now. But this is essentially this is the idea.
So how much of a shortcut in terms of the efficiencies that are gained would the accelerated evaluation be? I think you're saying, you would otherwise have to drive real world, billions of miles. If you drive 1,000 miles use the accelerated evaluation techniques, what would that equivalent be of real world miles that you feel like it would represent?
Right. So it depends. It depends. And also we are keep improving this algorithm. So it can vary from a few hundred to a few million right now. Why we have
a few
such
hundred
difference?
thousand?
No, a few hundred times,
Okay.
then a few million times.
I
So
see.
why the number varies? Because that is how much potential you can accelerate. When I say let's a few billion, 11 billion miles, that's for a human. So human actually have already done a very good job. On average, if you drive, if any human in the U.S., you need to drive 6,000 years to encounter a fatal crash scenario. So it's not a very actually human already have done a good job. So for a self-driving car that is as safe as a human, there is a huge potential to cut off those boring driving part and accelerate. But for a self-autonomous vehicle, that is very stupid. That's always have collisions. It's like a baby. It's very, very soon you will tell, oh, this car won't work. So that actually depends on how well the car designed. Let's just say ideally if the car is very well designed, that is, it never has any accidents. So you don't know how safe the car will be, right? So it's maybe 100% safe, but you can never tell how safe the car will be. So I would say usually just normally a few, maybe 10,000 times is a good number, roughly for a reasonable design car.
So you're saying with accelerated evaluation, you can achieve an efficiency of 10,000 times?
10,000 to 100,000, that's the current number. But we're also working on a more powerful algorithm that can be much smarter. So this is it's like you have this like a game series. So you're playing with so the self-driving car is trying to behave like I'm the best, and you're like a professor. So I can find which part you're not that perform very well. So we are working on the more powerful algorithm that can. Our goal is to try to finish the test in a week. So for example in M-City to tell whether the car is safer than a human or not. So to do that, we are we're rethinking all this method and redesign the algorithm, and also we are designing the tools to test autonomous vehicle, so that, for example, if the autonomous vehicle drive inside M-City, then we close the door and then we have all kinds of traffic. So already it's automated vehicles, automated pedestrians, automated cyclists will come out and interact with the self-driving car. And we can do that days and nights. And if, for example, if we can also simulate some of the weather condition, and then I think that the speed will be much faster. So the procedure will be accelerated a lot. So we are not we haven't reached that stage yet, but we are working very hard to that degree.
Well, I'm really glad that a lot of smart people are working on all of these angles. It seems like there's still work to be done, and it will be so important for companies having the confidence to deploy autonomous vehicles, and also for consumers to feel safe that they are a technology that can be trusted. So thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today. I really appreciate it. It was great talking with you.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks to Ding for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can find the show notes for this episode and all of our episodes on the Smarter Cars publication at medium.com. We look forward to seeing you next time.